Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. Thank you for tuning in to another Supatease video. And it seems like we cannot go a singular day without a monumentous, earth-shattering change being made to a class for the upcoming expansion Dragonflight. With this most recent update, I'm going to be covering Paladin, I'm going to be covering Frost Death Knight, and a little bit of Hunter. But one of those ground-shaking changes for Paladin being that Lay on Hands is now going to be usable in rated PvP. This is a spell that has historically never been used in rated PvP, and it may have implications towards other spells that are longer than 6 minutes in the future and could be a dangerous route to go down. And if you want to make sure that you're staying up to date with all of these monumentous changes, then make sure you hit that subscribe button, because it will just let you know when my videos based on news are updated here, and you will never miss a beat. You will be ahead of the competition. I am also working diligently to be the best resource for you to get to my long-term goal of 100,000 subscribers, and would greatly appreciate your support along that journey. But let's get started. Greetings, Holy Paladins. In the next build, we will have an updated tree ready for testing. This update will include major pathing changes, new spells, and node cost reduction. We would like to give you our thoughts on our design direction for this tree moving forward. Pathing improvements. We're excited at the prospect of offering tools for a casting-focused Holy Paladin build existing in this tree. Our intention is for this to not overpower the melee playstyle, but we want to find room for both to exist simultaneously without impeding each other. This is a very strange first sentence to bring with this paragraph. Not meant to overpower it, which means it will be inferior, which means any competitive player will never play it. Seems a little bit strange to lead off with that. At the same time, however, we do not think separating the tree into two distinct caster and melee paths is compelling tree structure in this case. I would argue that that might be a better way of doing it, because then if you wanted to be a full caster paladin, you could, or a full melee paladin, you could, and maybe depending on the circumstance, you'd switch between the two. Whereas if you blur the line of each specific path, I'm more a fan of having the distinct paths overall than kind of a blurred one. Our goal is to intermingle spells and abilities in such a way that players are encouraged to a path throughout the tree, but not feel like they must pick up undesirable talents for their build along the way. That seems impossible with wanting to intermingle them, because then you're like, well, melee paladin is the best because you've said that at the start of this paragraph, but I'm going to have to take a bunch of casted paladin talents to get to those melee talents that I don't really want. This seems to be like a complete conflict. This is one of the main things that I probably have the most concern with at the moment when it comes to class design, because I've seen a lot of positives. Like, I really love a lot of the changes they have been making, but in these most recent rounded updates with the shift of some talents to some classes, it seems like this specific philosophy may be impeding that a little bit. Spell changes. We felt the overall nodes in this tree were in a solid spot, and that most of the issues in this tree were pathing related. That said, we've added several new or returning spells in support of both the melee and caster styles. Hopefully this mixes gameplay up a bit more and offers further compelling choice, particularly in the bottom section of the tree. We've also removed a few nodes that we felt were not playing well until Liadrin's Fury Unleashed and Tyr's Magnificence effect will be added baseline to Tyr's Deliverance. So I do like, baking in talents together, removing a lot of the multi-talent nodes. I think that those have all been, like, across the board, really good changes for all the classes' talent trees. And now finally, Lay on Hands in rated PvP. We've decided to enable Lay on Hands in rated PvP with a 25% healing reduction. This change was influenced by several factors. Modern PvP realities are that a powerful heal such as this does not have the same level of impact that it did in previous versions of the game. I think that is a big red flag right there. If you can enable Lay on Hands in rated PvP and not even notice that you enabled Lay on Hands in rated PvP, there's something really wrong foundationally in the game, because if you were to do that in other versions, it would have been like, the flood is open and everything is filling up with water. So I'm just going to throw out there, seems like a bit of a red flag. It is likely that if we were to go back in time with the current tools we have, our solution would have been to apply a PvP modifier to such a strong ability with outright disabling. Given that Lay on Hands applies forbearance, its cooldown is quite significant, and with dampening and PvP multipliers to leverage, we feel comfortable enabling this iconic Paladin ability in rated PvP. This change will be applied soon and won't apply to the upcoming beta build. So, it's probably not going to have a tremendous amount of impact. The gameplay of it, as they've said here, listed with forbearance, probably not a big deal, but this kind of like constant, like, full HP healing type of gameplay where it's like, whoa, you're 1 HP and then you're full HP and then you're 1 HP and then you're full HP, getting away from that and kind of, having more attrition based health bars, I feel like is what a lot of PvPers have been aimed towards trying to get. I'm not sure if they're just doing this based on the logic here, which is sound logic, and also just maybe there's a bunch of talent spaced around it. But now you're getting new talents, you're getting new abilities. Infusion of Light is now learned baseline, good change. Divine Insight, new talent row 3. Holy Shock's healing and damage is increased. Getting a little bit of extra instant damage and healing is nice. Tyrion's Devotion, Lay on Hands cooldown is reduced by 1 second per holy power spent, so it's possible you will be able to get multiple Lay on Hands in like a rated PP match. Resplendent Light, Holy Light heals up to 5 targets within 8 yards for 8% of its healing. Curious to see how this splash healing ends up working out. Imbued Infusions. Consuming Infusion of Light reduces the cooldown of Holy Shock by 1 second. That's really nice. Unwavering Spirit. The cooldown of Aura Mastery is reduced by 30 seconds. That's really nice. Boundless Salvation. Casting Flash of Light on targets affected by Tears of Deliverance is going to extend the Tears of Deliverance hot. Casting Holy Light will also extend it by 1 second. So getting some casted heals for some extended hots. This seems like a really good change overall. Divine Favor. New talent row 5. The healing of your next Holy Light or Flash of Light is increased by 60%, and its cast time is reduced by 30%, 45-second cooldown. So Divine Favor becoming a talent means your honor talents are opening up. These are really good changes for Holy Paladin. Veneration, Flash of Light, Holy Light, and Judgment critical strikes reset the cooldown of Hammer of Wrath and make it usable on any target regardless of their health. Getting some extra damage mixed in there. Really like this change. Relentless Inquisitor, new talent row 9. Spending Holy Power grants you 1% haste per finisher. I never liked this legendary. I'm not a big fan of this one coming forward. Empyrean Endowment, new talent, row 10. Judgment empowers your next Sword of Glory to automatically activate Light of Dawn, but at a 25% effectiveness. This can only occur every 30 seconds, so getting some more splash healing. Inflorescence of the Sunwell, new talent, row 10. Infusion of Light has 1 additional charge, reduces the cost of Flash of Light by an additional 30%, and has a 30% chance to generate an additional Holy Power from Holy Light. So some very interesting talent changes being made here. Wondering how it's going to end, how they're going to end up making it feel like you have this multi-varied build without having to pick talents that you don't really want. Those seem like those are just two clashing ideals to be having. The next change comes in for Hunters, and this one is specifically aimed at Binding Shot. So Binding Shot is now no longer going to be an unbreakable root at a duration of 8 seconds. It is instead going to be a 3-second stun. So trying to balance an ability, again, that has conflicting issues in PvP versus PvE, right? In PvE, this is a desirable reason to bring a Hunter with an 8-second root, but in PvP, it was seen, you know, it doesn't really make sense that this root doesn't break, but other ones do. But at the same time, it's like, a lot of effects can work differently. You know, it's kind of what adds unique flavors to those effects, like having a root that doesn't break versus a class having a root that does break. I don't see why that should be such a confusing thing. It's like Polymorph breaks on damage, Cyclone doesn't. They're both crowd controls. Like, why does every crowd control have to work exactly the same as every other crowd control is really what I'm trying to get at. It doesn't make much sense to me. If they wanted to nerf the root in PvP, you could nerf its duration. Or something like that. But in PvP specifically, this is actually maybe going to make you stronger because you're going to be able to get Binding Shot, knock people away, get a trap out of it, or you've got now more reliable stun to go after, although the root was probably more powerful on classes that couldn't deal with the root. But this is going to be a very big impacting change for Binding Shot. We saw it now with Lay on Hands and Binding Shot. And finally, Frost Death Knight. This seems like a class that I honestly was starting to forgot that it existed. So there are plans to improve its talent tree, similarly to with Holy Paladin, reducing the node caps, moving talents around so that you're going to have access to more powerful ones without having to go through a whole bunch of other ones that you don't want. So it is really nice to see Frost Death Knight getting some attention. And let's take some looks at more specific ones here. Unleashed Frenzy now grants the strength buff when any runic power ability damages an enemy. Improved Frost Strike and Runic Command, swap positions in the tree. Glacial Advance, remove the cooldown. Moved higher into the tree is now unlocked after the first gate. Frost Scythe, moved higher into the tree, is now unlockable after the first gate. I don't know if I've ever really been a fan of Frost Scythe. A Horn of Winter, now frost only placed directly after improved Obliterate. So trying to give like unique reasons to bring Death Knight into Frost Death Knight into an environment. Improved Killing Machine, renamed to Frost Reavers to rename. Enduring Strength, now available directly after Pillar of Frost, trying to make this more linear. Frost Aid's Whelp is now also directly available after Pillar of Frost. Cold Heart, no longer a choice node with Inexorable Assault, moved to the right side of the tree. So try not to make competitive talents that were not going to be great choices between. Inexorable or Ice Cap, no longer a choice node with Obliteration, now available directly after Frost Aids or Enduring Strength. So more route to get the high value stats immediately. Empowered Rune Weapon now properly grants 1 charge if you know the spell from the core tree, so just bug fixes. Everfrost, now directly available from Gathering Storms, should no longer be able to be taken without knowing Remorseless Winter. New talent, Shattering Strike. When Frost Strike damages an enemy with 5 stacks of Razor Ice, it will consume them to deal additional 60%. I really like that. Staying on a target, getting uptime, and then getting a really big chunky Frost Strike. Those Frost Strike procs have always been what makes Frost Death Knight super satisfying, so I'm a big fan of that one. Avalanche, this has been updated to apply Razor Ice to your targets if Howling Blast is empowered by Rime. No longer a choice now with Frozen Pulse, now directly available after Ice Cap. Frozen Pulse is completely cut. After reworking the tree and making room for new talents, we felt like Frozen Pulse didn't offer anything unique to Frost, and rather than forcing it within the tree, we decided it best to cut for now and make room for what we are hoping is going to be more interesting options. I do like this because I feel like they're being what's the word, a little bit too generous with the potential amount of time on a lot of classes, with like how many different directions and how many different options they want them to be having. I mean, it's maybe a pessimistic view for what I'm assuming is going to be. There's going to be an optimal build for every class, and like this goal is never going to be met. That's just my personal take on it. I see a lot of game designers talking about like wanting to battle against the meta, but with global access to all this information, constant parsing and simming, and hundreds of thousands of games and intermingling of data. Like eventually, it's finited down into best in slot builds that interchange based on loadouts for given circumstances, right? Single target, AoE, utility, whatever. There's a multitude of options there. So I feel like there's a lot of concerted effort on something that is ultimately a frivolous venture, but that's my opinion. New talent, Icebreaker. When empowered by Rime, Howling Blast deals 30 to 60% increased damage to your primary target. Available after empowered rune weapon. I really like that. Howling Blast damage, Frost Strike procs like that, getting the big chunky burst damage, right? Frost Death Knight was always about burst. That's when I enjoyed it the most, like back in Warlords of Draenor, for example, when I mingled on it a little bit. So I really like that direction for it, getting some burst talents back into the class. That's what should be its identity versus Unholy being kind of rot army building up, overwhelming your target. Frost needs to be really chunky burst damage. So I'm glad that it's getting some attention. And again, we're going to be covering all of the updates and news that come through for the Dragonflight. So if you don't want to miss a beat, make sure to hit the subscribe button. But other than that, thank you very much for watching the video, and I will catch you in the next one.